Hey everybody. I'm going to talk about painting with acrylics and color theory a little bit today. We're doing our distance learning type of video here, so hopefully this will be helpful for you guys. I'm going to kind of go through the steps of how to mix basic color mixing in acrylics and talking about the basics of color theory. Before you do this and watch this video though, I do want you to look through the PowerPoint presentation that's in resources on the website, the class website. That'll give you some context for everything I'm talking about here. So if you haven't watched that yet, stop this, go watch that, and then come back to this, okay? So, before we left, I gave everybody a color wheel, some brushes, a set of paints, and a palette with a lid, which I don't have here at the moment. So I'm just going to use a paper plate, which works okay for what we're doing. You guys can use your palettes, but it's basically the same thing. And I'll get more into that, the differences there in a minute. Basically what we're going to be doing here is a basic color wheel. Color wheels are just a simple way of organizing color harmonies. And there are different types of color wheels. Some are very complicated, some are very simple. But it's just a nice visual way to kind of organize primary, secondary, and tertiary colors into a easily to understand like chart. And you guys probably went over some of this stuff probably in middle school, so it's not that huge of a deal. But some of this will be a review. It's not that difficult. Now, before we begin, I want to point something out here. Once you open up your paint set, you're going to see 5 colors here. These are not your ordinary colors, all right? You've got titanium white, which is pretty standard. You've got Hansa yellow pale, which again is pretty standard. But you've got quinadrochrome red, phthalo blue, and ivory black. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to need the black at all for this exercise. So forget about the black paint. I'm just going to set it over here to the side, all right? We're going to be working with these 4 colors. And what we're going to do is use this guy. Now, you should have one of these in your paint set. It's the Pocket Guide to Mixing Color. Do not lose this or throw it away. This is actually going to be your best friend for these next couple of assignments. All right, so let's take a look at what's inside here. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is here on the cover, there's actually a little color wheel already printed out. But if you unfold it, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute, you're going to see it's a very handy chart, and it's actually listing all the different types of color harmonies and how they work together. And then on the other side, you've got areas where you can mix your own colors if you want, but we're going to be using the color wheel. There's also a really handy glossary of basic color definitions. Super helpful, all right? So this guy is going to be your buddy during these next few assignments. This is going to really help you. And it's printed on nice, glossy paper. So what we're going to be able to do is when we mix our color, we're going to be able to dab it kind of directly on top of some of these colors and see if we get a match. And then we can very easily wipe it clean because it's glossy. All right. So definitely make sure you've got this handy. All right. Now, a couple quick words about acrylic paint. All right. Acrylics do not come out of clothing. Okay. So please make sure before you start painting that you are wearing clothes that they're kind of junky. You don't care about them if you get paint on them. Like I'm in shorts and a t-shirt right now, so I'm okay. Or just, you know, have a smock or something like an old button-down shirt. Maybe your parents have one or something that you can just put over your clothing. All right, this stuff is not going to come out of your clothes. It's not going to come out of your furniture. So don't be like doing this on the couch in the living room or on your bed in your room. Like I'm here like you at a desk. So if you can, you know, sit at the kitchen table or at some kind of a nice flat surface, so that you're not getting, there's no danger of getting paint on stuff. All right. So I've got my paints here. I've got my brushes. I've got my palette. I've got my color wheel. I've got a little bit of paper towel here to dab my wet brushes on. If you don't have any paper towels, because I know they're maybe kind of hard to come by, an old rag will work really well, like an old dish rag that your parents don't want anymore, because again, the paint's not going to come out of it. All right. So just again, be aware, these paints don't come out of clothing. All right. They'll come off your hands and everything pretty easily, but anything porous like cloth, they're there forever. So be aware of that. So what we're going to do for this color wheel is we are going to mix first our primary colors. And remember, primary colors are colors that cannot be created by mixing other colors. They are the building blocks of all the other colors in the color wheel, right? And those are yellow, red, and blue. Now, if you'll notice, these colors that come with your kit are not exactly a match for your primaries. So what you're going to need to do first step of this is to mix your primary colors. Okay? Which sounds a little weird, but see, this particular set is a color theory set. See it right there. And the reason why I usually order this for you guys is because it comes with this color guide, and it comes with these special blue and red that you have to mix to get them the proper hues for your primaries. Now, could you go to the art store and find these exact colors? Yes, you could. You could find all these colors like right out of the tube. But again, you're not going to learn how to mix color that way. So that's why we're doing it this way. All right. So I'm going to be grading you partially on how closely you're going to match these colors here. So step one, let's go ahead and on your palette, not too much, but put a little bit of red. That's a good amount. A little bit of yellow. You can, if you want to, even arrange them sort of like a color wheel. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this too. While I'm putting the blue out. Yellow is going to be the color that you need to really watch out for, because you're probably going to run out of that. White and yellow are the colors that tend to get used up the most quickly. So just be aware of how much you don't want to, like, your paint to go to waste, basically. See how I'm putting some color out, but I'm not putting a ton, I'm not squirting a bunch out. It's because I'm trying to be conservative. And then I'll just put a little white right here. So I'm giving myself some space on the palette to do some mixing, okay? And this is why, honestly, I kind of prefer a flat surface like a plate as opposed to the palettes you have. But the palettes you have are nice because they come with a little lid that snaps on, and that'll keep your paint wet in case you mix up a color and want to save it for later, all right? So, open your brushes up. On the back here, there's a little adhesive thing here. Pull these out. Okay. Now you want to go with kind of like a medium brush. So I'm gonna start mixing with this one here. You don't want to do too small or too big. So this is good. Put that in a little bit of water, get a little moist, dab off the excess, okay? Now the first color we're gonna do is yellow, because yellow is the one color that you can apply straight from the tube, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and make, you don't have to, but I'm gonna make the colors match this in terms of like the order they're in. So I'm gonna put yellow up top here in this top square. All right, and yellow is a translucent color, which means that when you put it down on paper or on canvas, it's gonna be see-through. Okay, so we're gonna see through a little bit of the paper. Right, so even if I'm painting slightly over the lines here, I can still kind of see the black lines underneath. Now, neatness counts on this assignment, folks, so please don't be sloppy. You see how I'm very slowly kind of using the flat edge of my brush to fill in the edges. Okay. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that there's a middle part to this wheel. I slightly went over the line there with my yellow. That's okay. If it really bothers me, I can get a little bit of white paint and touch that up, but I'm not worried about it right now. So you see this little triangle in here? This triangle, each section of this points to a different primary, so that shows you yellow is going to go here, but it's also going to go in here. So go ahead and take the yellow that's on your brush, fill that in. Again, take your time, don't rush. Okay. Remember, neatness counts. I know my hand is kind of covering up what I'm doing, so just be patient. If you want to rotate your paper to get a better angle, I am all for that. See, now that's much easier to get in there, get in that tight corner. Just like you're painting the trim on a wall or something. Just angle your brush. Okay. Just like that. And occasionally, you know, you want to dab a little bit of water on your brush, not too much, just a little bit. Okay. And also, please notice, before I go any further, I don't know if you can tell or not, see this cup that I have with my water in it? It is a plastic, disposable, like red Solo cup. All right? You will need a water container for this. Please do not use like a nice glass, like from your kitchen. Don't like go in your parents' cabinet and take a really nice glass and use it for paint water, because invariably you're going to get paint on the glass and it won't come off, and then the glass is ruined. No one wants to drink out of a glass full of acrylic paint. So use like either an old pickle jar or an old jelly jar or something like that if you have that laying around, or use just a plastic cup or like a fast food cup or something, all right? Okay, so it's a little speck of something on my brush. I'm gonna get that off. Okay. Now, I've already got 2 colors done on here. Now I'm going to do red next. Since I've already got yellow on my brush, I'm going to need to add a little bit of yellow to some red to make a true red. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and take a little more of my yellow, not all of it, and I'm going to start to gradually add some red in with the yellow. Notice I am, starting off with a small amount. Okay. If I need to, I'm going to just bring a little more of that straight out of the tube red in there. Okay. And mix with the yellow that was already on my brush. I'm trying to make a red that will match this color. So I've got some on here now, and I'm just going to go on my color chart and I'm just going to put a little bit right directly on top, just like that. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, and I'm looking and it's pretty close, but it's a little dark. You see that? So now I'm going to just grab a little more yellow now from over here in this part. I don't want to contaminate the pure yellow I've got. Get a little bit more and keep adding it. Just like that. A little bit of water occasionally if I feel like you don't want your paint watered down too much, but just a little bit every now and then helps. Okay, now you're going to have a lot on your brush too. Make sure you get that off. I'm going to wipe away. You can use your paper towel, or I'm just going to use my thumb and be a slob. Let's dab a little more on there. All right, and that matches pretty well. Still going to add just a little more yellow. It's going to look almost orangey to you, but it's not. It's not orange, but it's going to look close to orange. That's what your true red is. And this is probably going to equate to something like a cadmium red light or cadmium red medium in terms of like a tube color. Right? And I'd say that's a pretty good match right there. Okay? That's about as close as I'm going to get. So, don't want too much paint on your brush here. Get a little bit of that off. Got some other stuff on there. Okay? So now I'm going to put it in the corresponding place. Dab a little bit there and a little bit there, just so I know. Okay. And again, by all means, tilt your paper and really try to have a nice even coat of paint. Again, red is a kind of a translucent color, so going to be kind of see-through. So your color might look a little splotchy. So you might need to do more than one coat of the red. So just make sure you're mixing up enough of the color to fill up your area. Otherwise, you're going to have to mix more. And you know, it's not hard to do. It's just kind of a pain. So you don't want to mix too much and have paint wasted, but you want to mix up enough to where you can mix your primaries and even your secondary and tertiary colors too, which we'll go over more in a minute. Now, if on some of these corners you want to switch to a smaller brush, like you've got your smaller flat brush, you can, again, put a little water on that. Scrape off a lot of this excess here and get in those tight corners. And again, smooth out your paint as much as you can. You want a nice even coat. And for consistency, you kind of want paint that's it's not too thick and it's not too thin. It's got sort of a milky consistency to it. Or like a kind of a slightly watered down glue kind of consistency. You don't want it watery though. Watery paint will just make your paper buckle and it's not going to cover properly. All right, so there we go. I got a lot of paint left on this brush. I don't want to waste it. I'm going to get as much of that off as I can, and hopefully it'll stay wet enough to last for when I do my secondary colors. Okay. Now this is a question that some people have. Like right now, since I'm using red and orange, like red and yellow, I guess I could technically skip ahead and mix my oranges now and do those, but I kind of think it's better to mix all your primaries first, which means we're going to switch over to blue now. All right, so we'll set this to the side for a minute. Don't want to let it sit out for too long, because if the paint dries in that brush, it'll ruin the brush. I'm going to dump this in the water now. Try to get a little more paint off of this reservoir here. And we're going to try to get that brush clean. Just swirl it around in the water a little bit. The water will start to change color. Now, for the blue, we had to add a little yellow to the red to make it a true primary color. Now we want to add a little bit of white to the blue to make it match. Go ahead and wipe that off. Okay. Make sure you don't have any red left in there. The paint might stain the bristles a little bit. That's okay. You just don't want big globs of the previous color in there, because then it's going to contaminate your other colors, all right? But I think that's clean enough. If I have like too much red in this brush and I put it in the blue, then I'm going to be making purple, which eventually I'll need, but not yet. All right, so back to our color wheel. This is our true blue here. And again, if I take a little bit of that blue and dab it directly on top, you see how dark that is? So that's not gonna work. So, get a little bit of white, not too much. And mix it in with the blue. And again, add the color gradually. Don't take this whole thing of white and add it to the whole thing of blue. All right, because if that's not the right amount, then you're going to just have a big thing of blue that's not right, and you're going to have to keep adding more paint to get it right. So it's whenever you're mixing color, it's always important to just gradually add color a little bit at a time. Okay, and then test it out. So let's wipe that clean and try this. That's a much closer match. I'd say we could add just a tiny bit more white to that. A little bit of water to help the paint move around a little bit. Acrylic paint dries out really quickly. That's the biggest challenge of using acrylics, is the drying time is super quick. And when it dries, it gets like really plasticky. All right, I'd say that's close enough. That's like when it gets to the point when you dab it on top and you can't even really tell where you put the paint, then you know you've got a pretty close match. All right, so that wasn't too difficult. Now we've got our blue. Excuse me. So once again, now blue's going to go here and here. Again, follow the triangles, okay? Your primary colors are equally spaced. Each primary should have 3 blank squares in between it. So blue's going to go there and blue's going to go there. All right, so now let's again, very slowly, take our time. Rotate your paper if you need to. I think you might hear my dog start barking in a second. He hears another neighborhood dog out there trying to say hello to him. Yep, there he goes. I was gonna go chase that squirrel or whatever it is, and he'll never catch it. That's all right. All right, so again, just take your time. And again, don't do this until you know you have a match for your color, or a very, very close match for your color. If the color does not match, gradually keep adding more color until you get there. All right. This is where time lapse would be handy. Okay. There we go. Now our primaries are done. Now while I have some wet color on here, let's work on our secondary colors. Got a little bit of yellow there on my finger. I don't know how that happened. All right, so our primaries are red, yellow, and blue. Secondary colors are colors that are made by mixing two primaries together. So, yellow and red make orange. Yellow and blue make green. Red and blue make purple or violet. Okay? So those are our three secondaries. So while we have our true primaries still mixed, let's go ahead and try to mix our secondaries, all right? So let's put a little more water on our brush. Our red is starting to dry out a little bit, but that's okay. We still got some wet on there. Now we're going to add a little bit more yellow. So start mixing it over here, because we're going to need more yellow than normal. Okay. I'm going to use this brush since I already had, it's a little small, but I already had red on this brush, so it makes sense. Remember, all we're mixing is that true red that already had some yellow in it with more yellow. And we want to try to get orange. Go ahead and put that there for the moment. Okay. Once again, let's dab it on. Got to make sure that you're seeing the true orange should be right there in the middle, like one away from the yellow, like one in between, because those are your tertiaries. All right, so as we can see here, let's get it closer. Still a little dark, right? It's not quite, needs more yellow. Since I don't have any yellow left, go ahead and put a little more on my palette. Again, not too much. Like I said, yellow is going to be a color that you're going to be using a lot of when mixing. Now you might not be able to tell on the camera, but now this is starting to look more like that true orange, and this is more like a red orange, which is our tertiary. Sometimes you'll actually come across your tertiary first, and if that happens, go ahead and see if it matches, and if it does, you can go ahead and fill it in. Again, put a little bit of water in. Now I should also mention that they make a substance called a retardant that will make your acrylic paint, if you add it to your paint instead of water, it'll keep it from drying out. But you probably don't have that at home, but you can go to the store and buy it if you want to. All right, that's kind of a big bead of orange, but too big. But that's much closer to what we want. All right, I mean, I could put a little more yellow in there. But I'd say that's pretty good. All right, so for the secondary and tertiaries, I only have to fill one square. So it's going to be this one here, directly between the red and the yellow. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You were going to have to do this twice, because you've got this area too that points to the secondary color. A little bit of water in there. Make sure you got a nice even coat. Rotate your paper as needed. Like so. All right, now once you get your true orange mixed, at this point, if you want to, while you have this color still kind of wet, I think it's probably okay if you want to go ahead and try to mix your tertiary colors. And a tertiary color, again, is just one that is created when you mix a primary and a secondary together. So it's like those intermediate colors like yellow orange or red orange, or you know what I mean, those kind of things. So for this, just get a little more red. Take some of your orange here that you had and bring it over here where the red is. Put a little bit of water in there. A little more orange. And once again, find where it is. All right, there's our red orange right there, right next to the red. That's pretty close. I mean, I think it could use a little, it's a little dark though. Can you see that? So I think it could use a little more yellow, a little more orange. Even bring it over to the more yellow part of my palette here. That's much better. You see that? I just added that to the bottom there. That's pretty much a match. I'm happy with that. So fill that in down here. And again, for this one, you just need that one color. You don't have to put it in two separate parts there. Okay. Now we'll do yellow orange. So we just need to add, go ahead and wipe this off. So now we're probably going to just need to use up most of the rest of this yellow here for our yellow orange. Which is up here right next to the yellow. So it's this guy right here. Still too dark. So let's go all in here with the rest of this yellow. Yeah, still might need more yellow. But again, don't add too much. Just a little bit. Remember, don't want to waste paint. We don't need a ton of that color, just enough to fill in the wheel for now. It's close, but still not quite there. If you start getting too much paint on your brush, scrape some of it off. Because if your paint gets too thick on there, you're never going to be able to mix correctly. I'd say that's close enough. I could go a little bit with a little bit more yellow, but I'm happy. I'm happy with that. So that's a pretty close match. So again, make sure that you're applying this evenly. And you know, sometimes you'll mix a color and it'll look right to you in the moment, but then you go back and look at it after it dries and it's still not quite right. If that happens to you, don't worry about it. Just paint over the one you did and you should be fine. All right. I mean, I'm happy with this now, but if I go back to it and I decide, you know, it's not quite right, I'll remix and paint over. And if it's still wet, I'll show you another quick trick here. Sometimes you can just take a color, just a little tiny bit. I'm just going to take some pure yellow on my brush. And while this paint's still wet on my wheel, I'm just going to mix it right in there. The only difficulty with this is that you want to make sure that you're getting an even color. It's very easy to get an uneven coverage of a color, like it'll be different colors, but that's more for when we do regular painting. But sometimes that works, but you got to have, you know, wet into wet blending to do that. It's going to keep working that in until it's an even color. Okay. All right. So now let's switch over to our blues. And since we've got our reds here, let's add a little water to this brush. And I'm going to show you a trick here. Now, I had orange on this brush, which means I had yellow and red on here. So what's going to happen is, right now it's sort of greenish, but if I keep adding more to it, it's going to turn into like a brown. Okay? So you got to remember, if you're going to start mixing your violet colors now, you need true blue and true red. But it can't be orange. If you have too much yellow, it's going to start going more into the green side, and then it might just turn brown on you. Okay? So don't do this. What I just showed you, don't do that. Instead, what you should do is get a clean brush, wipe this off really good. Let's get some of our true blue back that we had. Let's bring in some of our red with our yellow in it. And start mixing it over here. A lot of people have trouble with purple. It's kind of a tricky color, so you gotta be careful. It needs just a little bit more blue in it. Proportions are tricky on this stuff, which is why notice I didn't take all the blue and put it in all the red. I took a little bit out of each and I started mixing it on a separate spot. Whoops. All right, that's pretty close. Just maybe a smidge more red in there now. All right, I think that, let's dab it one more time. Yep, that's a pretty good match on that bottom part there. So, once again, gonna add it here and here. And that's where my purple goes, because again, red plus blue, purple. Just like red, yellow, orange. Yellow, blue will be green. Again, this is my largest brush, so I can paint most of this, but when it comes to the corners, I might want to switch to the smaller brush. because even if I turn the paper, I think I'm gonna have a hard time getting in those little corners there. So I'll get my little brush. Go ahead and even that out as much as possible. You don't want lots of bumps and globs of paint. You want a nice even coat, not only in terms of color, but in terms of the application, the texture of it. Okay? Alright, so now that I've got my purple done, I'm going to go ahead and do my tertiaries for red violet and blue violet. So I'm going to kind of add a little more red to this violet. Let's get a little tiny bit of the, not too much, just a little sliver, just enough so I can get a little bit of that yellow in. Because you want a little bit of yellow, but not too much, otherwise you're going to get brown. Because remember, there has to be a little bit of yellow in the red. Make sure you're scraping all that extra stuff off the sides. See that? Way too dark. Way too dark. So I need almost a little bit more orange in there. But not quite. So it needs to mostly be the red. This, by the way, is the color that gives people the hardest time. Is red violet. Some people nail it right off the bat. Some people really struggle with this color. Much better. See the difference there between those two? This was my original, way too dark. And now I added some more yellow to it. More yellow and more red. And now I am much closer. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. You can add a little bit more yellow to it. But I'm pretty happy with that, so. Again, you want a nice, even coat. Now, folks, I am moving kind of fast on this. I don't think it's even been quite an hour yet that I've been painting, and I'm already almost done with this thing. I do not expect or want you to move as fast as I'm moving. Because honestly, I am making a few, they're very minor, but I'm, just little tiny bits where I'm going over the line. I don't want you to do that. That's kind of sloppy. I'm just doing this so that this video, I'm going quick so this video isn't lasting, a million hours. So please take your time and work much slower than I am. All right. Now, looking at this on the paper, this looks too dark to me. So here's an example of, remember when I said sometimes you mix a color and it looks right to you and then it doesn't? This is too dark. See, that doesn't quite match up what I'm doing. So I need to add even more yellow than I thought I needed. And I'm trying to not use too much to conserve it. But sometimes you gotta and honestly, the amount that was already on my brush is enough, I think. And I might need to just add a little smidge of white as well to this. Not too much. That's too much. Let's go back up here to my darker. Yeah, make it a little darker. Nice balance between the two. It was too dark, now I'm too light. So I think that's better. You might not be able to tell on the camera, I don't know, but definitely looks better in person. Okay. So at this point, I think my original violet kind of dried out. But I think I've got some on this brush here. I know I'm kind of crazy when I paint. I kind of hold multiple brushes. I'm going to let this dry a little bit and then go back over it. But in the meantime, I'm going to do my blue violet. Yes, blue violet. Need just a smidge of white in there, but not too much. A little bit more of the white. Sorry, I dabbed that off camera, so that's pretty much an exact match, so I'm happy with that. That over. Again, feel free to switch to a smaller brush if you don't feel confident getting in those corners. And nice even coat. There we go. All right. Okay. Now let's go ahead and try to finish up this red violet that we were working on before. That looks pretty close. Need to even that out a little bit. Okay, that's about right. So, it's coming along. Got a few areas here in the oranges that I don't, it's a little uneven. I'm probably gonna go back and try to even that out. Put another coat on top. Again, those reds are kind of translucent. All right, and then of course I need to do my greens, and greens are not that hard to do. So, I'm not going to go through all this, but just basically for the greens, mix an even amount of blue, true blue, with yellow, and that will give you your green, which will go here and here. And then this will be your blue green. This will be your yellow green. So yellow green, just a little bit more yellow. Blue green is more on the blue side. And then you'll be done with this color wheel. And then the next step will be taking these harmonies that you learned. This middle triangle, again, is your primaries. Red, yellow, blue, which point to these. Then these two make the secondary colors, yellow, red, orange, yellow, blue, green, red, blue, violet. And then your tertiary colors are in between the primaries and the secondaries. All right. And then after this, we're going to do another assignment where we're going to come up with some designs and just kind of abstract kind of geometric designs. And then you're going to paint them using different color harmonies. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up off camera. I hope this helped you guys. Of course, I'll be available in the Zoom, and I'll set that up for next week. If you guys have any questions or problems, but again, the key to take away here is only mix a little bit of paint at a time. Do it gradually. Don't put tons of globs of paint on there. You're just going to waste paint that way. So add it gradually. Start with your primaries, then your secondaries, then your tertiaries. Try to do them in order if you can. And neatness counts. So just take your time. Don't go as fast as I did. All right. If you finish this in an hour or a little over an hour, chances are it's going to look really sloppy, and you're not going to really be able to fix it. So please go slowly. Take your time and be as neat as you can. I will partially be grading you on craftsmanship on these, okay? And one more thing before I go, you want to make sure you are cleaning your brushes, right? That is not a clean brush at all, right? So what you're going to want to do is get some clean water. Like, see how dirty this water is? I'm going to go get some clean water, maybe put a little bit of soap in the brush, and just clean these brushes really well. If acrylic paint dries in your brush, it's hosed. You can't really fix it. I mean, there are cleansers you can buy that you can attempt to get them clean, but it's very difficult to do that. It's kind of a pain. Now, granted, these are not the greatest brushes in the world. They're decent brushes, but they're not like super nice. But still, if you take care of your materials, they'll take care of you. So definitely wash these out with soap and water. And like, actually, when you get the soap, like, really work the paint out of the bristles. See all that paint that's still in there? Okay, you want to get all that out. Do not let your brushes get ruined. Okay, so clean your brushes out really well. Dump your water out. You can save your palette. Once this paint dries out, like if you guys are using your real palettes, you can peel the paint out once it's dry. It's actually kind of fun. This is just a paper plate. I can just toss this and get another one. But honestly, I'll probably use this again, because once this paint dries, I can mix more color over it. So I'm probably going to get several more uses out of this. But don't feel like you've got to clean your palette out and wash it till it's spotless. You can still use it like this. I mean, when I was in school, we used to have like layers and layers and layers stacked up of dried acrylic paint on our palettes. So don't feel like your palettes have to be spotless when you clean them, okay? Because they don't. All right, so I hope that helped. Again, I didn't quite finish, but again, the greens are pretty self-explanatory. And good luck, and ask me questions if you need to during the Zoom, okay? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.